As we said before, you may not want to change the preferences because ACT has basically selected preferences that should be good for most people. But if you do want to tweak some settings, there are a lot of settings that you can tweak. What we're going to do is go up to the menus, click on Tools, and then come down all the way down to the bottom to Preferences and click on Preferences. That brings up the Preferences dialog box. As you can see, we're on the General tab. And in the General tab, we have, of course, General Preferences. One of the general preferences is always display country code in phone fields. In other words, do you want to see the country code even if most of them are the United States? What about allow history editing? Do you want to allow history editing, or do you want history to just absolutely be history and cannot be edited? In other words, if you delete something, you can't clear it. It has to be just deleted, and it'll still show up that you deleted that item. It depends on the organization as to how you want that done. For sales quotes, there are quote preferences. For generating quotes, do you want to prompt for the quote number, and if desired, the quote prefix? It just has to do with how you're handling the sales quotes and if you're using ACT in regards to sales quotes. Where do you want to put your information? Your personal files locations are where you put your information. For example, the database itself. Where do you want to put that? Do you like where it is? Do you want to browse and put it someplace else? As we said, mine is buried in document settings and then ACT and then a subdirectory, and that's just the way that it turned out. You could put yours closer to the top of the hierarchy if you want to. There's no real advantage performance-wise to doing that. It just might be better for you organizationally. But we can also click on the drop down. You can decide where you want to put your documents, attachments in ACT, where you want to put internet links, where you want to put dictionaries. So all of these are options that are available in the General Preferences tab. Another option are how we customize names and salutation settings. For example, when you create a letter, you just say, okay, well, I want to create this letter with the template. And the template has the salutation. And the salutation is, dear Mr. or dear whatever. Well, how do you want that to be done? Click on Name Preferences. You can say, well, what I want is Mr. and then their first name and their last name, and then if it's a senior or whatever. Okay, or I want the last name suffixes or whatever you want in regards to that. Okay, and then how do you handle if it says like junior or senior? How are you going to handle those? In other words, are you going to use that? Is that going to show up? So what ACT has done is just made some examples, right? For example, use the last name including the last name prefix and the last name suffix, right? So in other words, Mr. Doe Senior would be in that case. Or use the first name and last names only. That would be John Doe. Okay, so you can tweak that out to however you want to do. Now, what ACT has done by default is it'll just show up as Mr. John Doe Sr. And it knows how to handle most of those things. But if it does not know how to handle a particular salutation, then you can add that in your salutation preferences. And then, what about duplicate checking? Do you want the duplicate checking to happen on an ongoing basis? Then you can set that the system will automatically check for duplicates in the database. If you don't want that to happen automatically, you want to set that off manually when you want to set it off, then you can set it that way. So all of that is just on the General Preferences tab. There's also a Color and Fonts tab, and we'll discuss the Color and Fonts tab next.